I was wondering if we could add to new business a discussion regarding our OPP contract parameters. We have had a lot of questions at council during budgeting, and so just wondering if we could have a discussion at that time.
I would second that as an amendment to the agenda.
We'll enter into new business discussion on OPP billing. Your Worship, just a question. Should any staff be, other staff besides Tom, be aware that we're doing this, that in case they are, if they have an interest?
I would suggest they would not be surprised given the conversation at the budget
Okay.
meetings. We have, over the past year, we've had this discussion about the possibility of enhancement. So no one will be surprised, and we do have rough numbers. In fact, I think we have exact numbers from the OPP, but I'll say we have rough numbers from council because we're dealing from memory. So.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? See none. Approval of the minutes of previous meeting. Moved by His Worship, second by Aurora. All in favor? Approved. Any business arising from those minutes? I see none. And so we'll get to item 6, monthly report. And first of all, I don't think, Jeff, last meeting you were the official inspector, so congratulations, welcome. And,
thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd also like to introduce my partner today, Acting Staff Sergeant Kaylee O'Neill. Kaylee is a detective sergeant and a polygraph examiner, and Kaylee's a Coburg boy himself, so he spent a lot of time before heading off to the forensic side of examination out of the Coburg office in the crime unit. So Kaylee's in that acting role until the end of January, and you might have a couple other things to add. Kaylee, you've done a lot in your career. Maybe. True team.
welcome. Just remind when we're talking, we need to push the talk button so that the red light comes on, so folks can hear you. But anyways.
So I understand that Kaylee does not have his machine with him. At any time, so but we can get it. Yeah.
A lot of politicians
Not like
in
the
the room.
movies.
That's not allowed, by the way. Okay, carry on, Jeff.
Certainly, thank you. I'll move on to our, so it's a 2-month combined report for September and October for Brighton. Starting at the top for our complaints, we do have 2 service complaints that were intake through the OIRPD office. Both have been processed through to the OPP professional standards. I'm aware of the contents of both of these complaints, and I'm confident that they'll be resolved in the next month. Secondary employment, you probably would have seen for the last several years, we had 5 employees. That 5 number never seemed to change for some reason, so we did an audit of that a couple months ago, and in fact, we only have 2 police officers within Northumberland that have secondary employment outside of the OPP. Under your stat report, so combined total cruiser patrol hours for September and October, 503.5. 1 hour of motorcycle patrol in there during those months, 40 hours of foot patrol, and 25 hours of school patrol hours. Under our detachment initiatives, again, what we usually throw in different pieces of interest, media releases, both media releases locally, but also from corporate communications in the OPP.
Jeff, just before you carry on your daily activity, it tweaked in my mind the number of school board hours. Last time we talked about some issues with some students. addition, is that kind of being resolved to some
Yeah,
extent?
I was going to,
Okay.
I can speak to it now.
Yeah, that's fine. Carry on if you're going to deal with it.
Yeah, I was going to give the board an update on the plaza
Okay.
issue. So under detachment initiatives, one thing that we're especially proud of is our collision reporting center just opened on the 15th of November out of the Coburg office. And a little background on that, back in January, Inspector Halton and I submitted a business case to up the chain of command through the OPP. There was an opportunity for several different detachments in the province to open up a CRC, and you generally see these through the GTA, so with the fender benders and non-personal injury, our communications center will direct those involved to a collision reporting center. The big piece of that is it keeps our officers in the communities rather than dealing with an hour or two of these collisions. So there were 19 applications provincially. There were 6 detachments that were chosen. We did apply for both Brighton and Coburg detachment, thinking that maybe we might get one, and we were successful for the Coburg office. We had an extremely short window turnaround of about 5 weeks, Kaylee, I think, to make that happen, and that included hiring of staff as well and getting them all online. But this guy was a huge part of that, and he made it happen, and opened up Monday morning. Piece of interest there, Ken Hamill, who is our auxiliary staff sergeant, who his last tour was on Halloween night, actually right in Brighton, foot patrol. In true Kenny style, he ended up working till 4 or 5 in the morning helping out. So we offered Ken a job 2 days after that as part of our CRC. So Ken was elated to take on that job, and he's going to be, I think he's been doing the most collision reports since that time too.
Seems to be, yes.
So we're pretty excited about that. There is going to be, we did do a local release on that, but there's going to be a much broader provincial release when all 6 are up and going. Bragging Rights, Northumberland was the one that met that mark of the 16th of November. So we're pretty excited about that. Again, the point of that is the efficiency is for those minor collisions. We can direct people. It gets people off the 401, both citizens and our officers. And it's that time saver, keeping our patrol officers in the communities.
So Jeff, a quick question. Congratulations, and I think it's a real good thing. So for the people in the east end of your catchment, Brighton, for example, there is one in Trenton. Can people from Brighton access the Trenton one
Yes, they can.
for collision?
Yep.
Okay.
And our communications center, we used to be able to Smith Falls, but about 3 or 4 years ago, we switched to Aurelia. So all of the dispatchers and all the staff in the provincial communication centers are trained basically wherever they are. They will send them if it meets the criteria of CRC collision. If there's any injury at all or fail to remain, an officer will always come. And even if it is a PD and the dispatcher picks up that it would be beneficial to an officer, we'll always go. But it doesn't have boundaries. So
Okay.
somebody passing through, you can report it at the Whitby, because Whitby is a 24/7 detachment, traffic only. So they have a very significant CRC station there as well.
Perfect, thank you. That's good.
Okay, moving on to a few of our media releases. The first in your package is the Brighton mischief that you would have seen in the media around September. So we're still working on that through Crime Stoppers as well. A suspicious vehicle media release. This was a concerning one where an elderly gentleman stopped and approached a young lad on his way to school on a bicycle, offering him candy. Our uniform and crime unit members didn't waste any time, and that individual was identified within 12 hours, and that was resolved. Next, a mischief in Harwood, also similar to the Brighton, it qualified as a hate crime as well. So when that criteria is met, that activates a hate crime section in our general headquarters, and gets a variety of people from the provincial level working on that investigation. Next is that was our local media release about the results of our Thanksgiving long weekend traffic blitz. So you'll see a few of the charges that were laid locally, I think 77 in total, includes some ATV charges as well. Next is from the Organized Crime Enforcement Bureau, Corporate Communication, just a release about provincial 2019 opioids and overdoses over the past year and a half. So quite a spike in overdose, certainly through the pandemic, and that's global, not just Canada or Ontario. Next is from our Security Bureau. This is our media release in regards to our criminal record check system. And the Commissioner made the decision in early October to move that system back to detachment for the time being. It was pushed out online because of the pandemic, and it was learned very quickly that the demand was just too great for the beta system at the time. So back to our staff at local detachments, we'll be doing that through the winter. I can tell you our local admin staff was very happy to hear that, to be part of the solution again of getting through the piles and the buildup. Provincially, the goal is to have that more robust online system back up and going in May, and then we'll carry on from there.
Thank you for that.
Next is from our Central Region headquarters, which Northumberland is part of. Central Region just announcing 20 new recruits that are now serving our communities. Northumberland received 4 of those 20 recruits, and 2 of them are stationed out of Brighton Detachment. Now, I did send a video through. I know there's been some issues there. My first wasn't very successful, and the second, the full file I sent to the chairs, I've heard that some went through fine, and then others was asking for a username and password. So
Yeah, I had trouble, but that could be me too.
yeah,
So,
well, I know the first one was on my side, so I'm my techie Eats, which is the compression software. I'm going to be talking to him tomorrow, so he's going to sort that out. So you'll probably see it. I'll send it out again and make sure. It's about a 4-minute video introducing our new recruits. We made it specifically.
I simply added a username and password and created a little login that allowed me to do that, and I watched the video. So
Good. Okay.
it was a good little video.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
I
It
made
was
that for the boards, just to introduce our new folks and pretty interesting, diverse backgrounds on our new officers. So.
Normally, I don't blame anybody because it's probably me. My IT, it's not all that great, so. Okay, please, I'll call you. Yeah, normally I call my grandkids, but they weren't available.
Okay, and so that's just for a few different initiatives we have going on through September, October. So moving on to the stats portion of the report. First is motor vehicle collisions. So countywide for September and October months, 118 total, down from 157 for those same 2 months last year. Fatalities, we've had some tragedies through this time period. We had 3 motor vehicle collisions resulting in fatalities in an 8-day period. One was in Trent Hills with a single motor vehicle, and the other 2 were in Crammy. One was involving 2 ATVs on a county road, and the other were 2 motorcycles colliding on Highway 2 just west of Colburn. And that was unfortunately, one particular platoon investigated all 3. So that's where we really keep an eye and support our officers on the wellness piece from what they are seeing and dealing with at scenes like that. Your next page is there's 2 templates for, this is countywide, just showing you the statistics throughout all the municipalities in the 401. So you'll see Brighton for September. 5 MVCs in total, which is a great low number. One of those involved personal injury, the other 4 were property damage only. And year-to-date total for September was 65. Same template for October, 14 MVCs, 11 were property damage, 3 involving personal injury, and that brought your year-to-date to 80. Next stats part is violent crime. So for September and October, only 3 incidents of violent crime. 1 was a sexual assault, 2 were assault. The assaults were one-offs. One was an ongoing neighbor dispute that ended up in fisticuffs. And so there was only a total of 3 violent crime for Brighton, down from 13 from this time last year. Property crime, again, another significant decrease, 13 total for September, October, compared to the same time of 31 last year. Drug crime, no charges during that time. And then our clearance rate page, which speaks to the status of the investigation. Usually violent crime, we're always hovering around 100% or at 100%, because usually it's property crime is much lower when you're talking key scratching or mailbox baseball, things like that. They're pretty difficult to solve. Next portion is the Warkworth institution stats, violent crime, 7 down a little bit from 9. This is all institution data, no property crime, no drug crime at all in jail, apparently. Clearance rate section. Next part is matters of interest, so specific to September, 250 OPP calls for service.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, could we just go back to Warkworth for a second? I understand they are having very serious issues with drones dropping contraband into the institution, which is both concerning and incredibly impressive when you think about people's willingness to try to get away with things and what they're willing to do to try to do these things. Is that an OPP issue or is that an internal Corrections Canada issue?
We're approaching it as partners on that.
Okay.
We have to.
Yeah.
And this is a correctional, both provincial and federal institution Canada-wide. They're dealing with this issue. The contraband, the drugs, the tobacco that they're dropping, massive value,
Right.
different value
Inside.
than exactly.
Yeah.
So with that leverage inside, that can lead to different things and violence. So
Right.
we all know that. So Kelly Mason, Kelly's sergeant out of Brighton, she's the lead on that, working with Warkworth. So she's been in touch in the last 2 weeks with the liaison from Warkworth. We're trying to coordinate, much like we do for the Black Cats in traffic, trying to really hone down on the times that this is happening so we can have an officer. Whenever that's happening, we know there's somebody on foot or in a car somewhere in the vicinity. Problem is, these drones, and they're not very expensive anymore, they can fly up to 10 kilometers with having that available. OcuLink, they call it, that technology. So it becomes more difficult for us. We have stopped some suspicious vehicles over the last year or two, but no charges have been laid or in that regard.
So there is a local person who is a falconer, deals with mostly on the base, deals with birds. It has a bird of prey, so it deals with birds getting in the way of air transportation. But they have a division in their company that deals with wildlife issues on the landfill site, and they use drones for that purpose. And so he was in my office talking about that. I've connected him with the county people over that. But he made a comment about being able to shut drones down with the technology they have. And I went, you should be in touch with someone at the Warkworth Institution. Mm-hmm. Turns out his neighbor is a guard at the pen, and his brother is the deputy warden. So they're easily connected. So he just said, I'll just go walk next door. So that's good. But maybe I should connect you with this individual as well.
Yeah, we could get Kelly, as a team, to tackle the issue. That was my first question to Kelly last week, was what certainly nationwide Warkworth is relatively small in comparison to the number of pens that they have in the Kingston area. So this is all over. So that was, what are they using for tech? Because I know there's a few different frequency jamming, all sorts of different things. So we're in the early stages of that partnership, but certainly see where it goes.
Thank you.
Okay, I was at matters of interest for September, so 250 calls for service in Brighton for September. Only one of those was a COVID non-compliance related call. And then for your reading pleasure, the various stories throughout September. Brings us to the October matters of interest, 280 calls for service in October, and 4 of those were COVID non-compliance issue calls. And I won't read to you the stories. We beefed them up a little bit just to have a little bit more, a couple extra examples, but they're a little more lengthy because we're talking the 2 months as well. Next template is our provincial offense charges, so tickets for September, 49 in total, 10 on the 401, 39 elsewhere in the municipality. In October, 72 total, 35 in the 401, 37 elsewhere in the municipality. False alarm reports for September, 2 alarms at 2 dispatch locations. It's a nice low number. And in October, up a little bit, 8 alarms, 7 of which officers attended. We've included the quarterly, our analytical report that we do quarterly. The first is on property crime over the 3-year term from October 17th to September 20 in Brighton. Overall, for property crime, in that time, a downward trend. And you'll see on the line graph on the third page of that package continues to trend down, which we like to see. Looks like only 23 in the third quarter of this year. And then a breakdown of what those property crimes are on the bar graph. And then similar quarterly report on drug-related occurrences for the same time period. And again, overall, drug occurrences are up. Certainly during the pandemic, we see more impaired driving. We see more impaired by drug. Part of that is directly linked to the legalization of marijuana. And certainly we've seen more drug overdoses throughout the county and abuse of substance abuse during the pandemic. So that's reflected in this report. And usually we would have the revenue report at the end tracking our criminal record check revenue. But with that new system, we've done away with that. The money still comes back to the municipality, but it's done on a quarterly basis and as a credit for the municipal contract. And then we would usually include the auxiliary report as well, but they're still, for the most part, stood down and no community activities to help out with right now. Pending any questions, Mr. Chair, that's your reports.
The number is low, I think, but I find that just kind of...
I know. I think the number was 2.
2, yes.
And I was surprised by it as well. Even if it is just 2, it seems like such an automatic thing for me to get in the car and do up my seatbelt. Even if I get in the car and I'm checking my phone before I leave the park, my seatbelt's on. Nothing's going to happen to me while I'm parked there. But it's the first thing I do when I get into my vehicle, so it does seem odd to me.
It just kind of stuck out. I go, you mean there's people who do this? But
It's
what we do see a lot of within the communities. The compliance is exceptionally high, which is good news. So Brighton is very high. All our towns or villages, it's very high. Kevin McAllister, who's a Brighton officer, and he's a dedicated traffic officer, and Chad LaPearl. Chad is our HSD traffic officer regional body, but he's down here 2/3 of the time. They're quite a duo, and they, in September, this was all 401 related, so they do some seatbelt blitzes on the off-ramps from the 401. In one day, they got 65 speeding tickets. So disappointing to see that, but 401 traffic from other areas, not your community, but certainly still a problem out there. Kim Johnson, our media officer, I believe she did put out a couple media pics on that particular day. You had 2-year-olds sitting on a milk crate, 2-year-olds sitting on a booster seat for your kitchen table, and so things like that. So, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we continue to obviously locally and corporately educate. That's one of our big 4 for traffic seatbelts. So it's our enforcement's not going away. So we just hope that compliance keeps rising provincially.
okay. All right. So any other further questions? Yes.
just a couple of comments, and I know we're always a month or two behind the reality of today. So I just want to thank the OPP for their help with Remembrance Day. I did that by email, Jeff, but publicly, thank you for the work you did and bringing. I know an auxiliary officer volunteered to come out, even though they don't have to right now. So thanks for that. It was a successful event, and it was helpful to have OPP presence.
Yes, I understand it went very well. And Kelly Mason, actually, Kelly's your sergeant for Brighton. It's stat day, so Kelly, it was her day off, so she came in and volunteered to get it done too. So I passed along your thanks as well as council. So yeah, good to hear that it went very well.
That's nice. And as most of you know, my my wife is a grade 2 teacher over at Spring Valley, and Kim did an assembly with the whole school. The kids were in their classrooms. Kim was on WebEx or whatever the KPR uses, giving them some sort of assembly. I'm not even sure what the content was, frankly, but my wife commented, my wife who hates this kind of technology, commented it was very successful, very well done.
That's great to hear. I'll pass that back to Kim.
Okay. So I think we move on to correspondence. I think we're there. Yes. Oh, okay, sure. Moved by the mayor and seconded. Okay, correspondence. So we have a couple of pieces. One from the Halton Police Services Board. I thought this was more a municipal thing, Your Worship. I'm not sure that, although this was done, but maybe we could do it if we so choose. I mean, but
I'm happy to either receive it as correspondence or pass a motion ourselves, but at this stage, I think it's an important initiative. I'm glad the Halton Police Board has done this, but at this stage, I think it would be appropriate for the Brighton Police Services Board to receive it as information, and I would move that.
okay, moved by the mayor, seconded by deputy mayor. And I guess we're all in favor. The other piece is from a resident. Oh, sorry, I have one here that I actually just got yesterday. Not what you have in front of you. It's from the Ontario Association of Police Services Board, and I guess there is a review of the transportation for prisons done provincially. But do we have we're not involved with that, are we at all?
To add to that, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So for prisoner transportation, there is a Attorney General review going on right now, checking in with all. You do have the court still in Brighton, but outside of the pandemic even, it was only used once a month. So our stats go in through the OPP as far as our limited use there. Prisoner transportation doesn't factor in. We have the prisoner transportation unit based out of Lindsay, so they take care of that as well. So we're doing that stat submission side with the Attorney General.
Good. I just thought I'd bring it to your attention. So the Ontario Association of Police Services Board sent out a note to me, to the PSB, and it's in regards to the Solicitor General doing a review of the transportation for a court. And the OPP is looking after that. So then we had this other one that came to me from David Green through some correspondence he had, and he forwarded to me. I did get back to the gentleman and made him aware that I will bring his concerns to this group. And then lo and behold, last night or this morning, I opened my email account, and there's a two-pager of looks like. So I'm not sure how we handle these things. I know there's been some past experience with the mayor, but I did commit that somebody will get back to him, whether it's me or somebody else. So I'm looking for some direction. Yes,
If I may, I know that the OPP are aware of the concerns from the resident in Hilton. That's the correspondence we're speaking of. And I also know from correspondence I've had with the inspector, when he was acting inspector at the time, that some increased enforcement did happen during complaint periods. So I do, when a citizen approaches me with these, I do always ask them to please be in touch with the OPP. That my experience is that when a citizen reaches out, especially if the squeaky wheel gets the oil, especially if they do it frequently enough, with a legitimate concern, that enforcement will happen in their area. So I would continue to encourage that if there is a concern. I do know that I think we put a black cat out there, which is the speed monitoring device. Thrice.
Yeah, in the past 2 years, there's been 3 there.
Okay.
Black Cat reviews, both through Mark Collins, our traffic sergeant, and Alan McGee, coordinating that. And each time it's come in. There's the odd speeder, of course, but if not an overall speeding issue, there has been some enforcement there. For the most part, area residents were stopped and warned or charged. Right. But so when we have these ongoing one in other communities, no matter what the issue is, maybe it's environmental or engineering of the road for whatever reason, or a complainant, we have no issue with putting up a black cat once a year just for that community relations part of it. So we have usually we call them hotspots, 2 or 3 traffic hotspots in every municipality that we just know when that black cat, municipally owned black cat, is available. We'll throw it up there just so when that long-time resident contacts us again, we'll be in a position where we say, well, in fact, we just put it up there, and we still go there as well. We still make our patrols, but with all the traffic complaints that come in county-wise, we obviously have to prioritize of where we set up our officers and radar.
So, yes, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, this resident says they are stunt drivers, and that they've been told that the OPP doesn't have time for it. I just, there's some strong accusations in here, and that the black cat was put on facing the wrong way. I just, have you read this? I just want to kind of address some of this to make sure that we have discussed it in this meeting.
Fair enough. So when that came through, I forward anything like that that's rather contentious on to Mark Collins. Mark is terrific at touching base. So I haven't heard the results of Mark's interaction, whether it was in person. Quite often he'll stop by to see if they can meet at the end of the driveway. That gives him the opportunity of explaining a few different things, or, this car, how fast do you think that car is? And Mark may have a handheld radar with him, and that sometimes helps as well. I don't right now have an update of what interaction took place there, but it will.
So can I suggest then, Jeff, if he can get back to this gentleman and suggest maybe we'll meet at the end of the driveway, I think that would go a long way from that perspective of visibility. And then maybe, I'm not sure what happens when they meet, but maybe deliver firsthand what actions this resident has it as an option to call. But is that feasible?
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Chair, if it hasn't happened already. But I'll follow up with that.
Yeah,
And,
based on this note we got last night, obviously it's pretty fresh. So I presume it hasn't happened.
there was a previous letter, was there not?
Yes, there was a previous letter which was circulated, and then just this morning we circulated a sort of a chronological
A follow-up letter, if you will.
follow-up, 2 pages long.
I can assure you, Mr. Chair, I'll make that a priority for next week.
Okay, so
It might be the case that it hasn't been communicated to this gentleman what the results of the last 3 black cats were as well. Alan does a terrific job in this municipality for being proactive, getting the black cats up. Usually when a complaint comes to us, we have to ask Alan, put us on your list, because he's out proactively getting the studies done. He's the best in the county. You've got the best guy for getting those up. Each municipality, the relationship with us is a little bit different of whose responsibility that is with the municipality. So I'll just make sure that Alan and Mark connect, and somebody lets the gentleman know. OPP will do the end of the driveway. We'll just make sure that it's also been communicated on the results of these black cats.
okay, so I will get back to this gentleman and let him know that somebody, if they haven't already, somebody will be in touch with them. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. Could I ask, could that recent letter be
Yeah.
passed along as well?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do they have a copy, Tom?
I didn't see it in this one, but I
Okay.
can.
Well,
I
it
can
wasn't
follow
part of the
up on it.
package.
Is it on
Yeah.
your desk?
Oh. Thank you. Well, I brought a guest. I think that was a bit of a musical chairs.
Okay, thanks very much for looking after that. And the only other thing, so I don't have any further correspondence. So we go to new business, and we have a presentation on OPP billing.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So I just need a minute to
Go ahead.
to Skype in with my municipal billing analyst, Linda Davis. I wasn't very successful just before the meeting, so we might have to go audio only, but we'll see what we can do here.
Just while we have a moment, I'm going to have to step out briefly at about 11 o'clock for a teleconference regarding some funeral arrangements for tomorrow, so
Yep.
just to make you guys aware.
Thank you. No, not a problem.
Did you? Oh, that was, Kate, our elder, was born on Remembrance Day, so that would have been.
Okay, we're at that a little bit later than what we discussed, but we're at the point in the Brighton Services Board meeting discussion about municipal billing. I've got the board members here who have tremendous experience in board and leadership within the community. So I introduced you and what your specialty is. So if I'm just going to turn my laptop around so everyone can see that I'm going to put the volume up high, and then there's going to be some discussion and questions from the board members, and then I think some questions specific. Bear with me a few seconds here. You sound good, and I see the image well, so we might not have to use our fallback. So it's good.
How about some books? There's those criminal code books are good and thick. Yeah.
Good morning. Welcome.
How's that, Linda? How's your perspective?
Good, good, good. We're just trying to prop you up on some books so that we can see you. So you'll be much taller. No. All right. So, Linda, were you going to make some kind of presentation first? Is that the intent?
I think the deputy mayor may have had some questions, and we
Okay,
can maybe perhaps go from there. There's been some questions through council, I understand.
Okay, carry on.
Sure, I can kind of let you know where we're at, and I don't know if the mayor wants to pipe in as well. But over probably the last year, we've discussed the OPP contract has come up a number of times. I think we have a few different concerns amongst council members. I think the biggest one is the rate of growth in Brighton and whether or not our contract is being increased, the policing hours being increased along with that, or whether we need to look at it. Of course, it's a big budget issue, and we don't want to do that unless we need to. At least most of us don't want to do that unless we need to. And we also get the common complaints about, there aren't enough police officers. Sometimes there's only one for all of Brighton, or they're always at the 401. We get those common questions as well, which maybe we could address later. So I think my big question would be, how many hours that Brighton is paying for with the current contract, and does it increase as our growth happens?
Okay, I'm having a great difficulty hearing you from a distance, a little bit more garbled. However, I did not catch what you were saying into it, but I did hear the end, and I'm prepared for that question about, I believe you said how many policing hours is Brighton currently paying for?
Correct. Yes.
You need to speak,
Yes.
up.
Adjustments here, Linda, make it better for you. We're just putting the speaker closer to my computer, so hopefully you can
Tom,
hear.
that speaker won't work if the inspector's light is on. There you go.
Am I okay to go ahead and answer now?
Yeah, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can understand your thought process for asking this question about policing hours. As prior to 2015, municipalities that were in a session 10 agreement with the OPP were billed based on full-time equivalent officers.
and now it's starting to creep back up. So if I may, so basically we're paying based on a quasi property tax level if we're being billed based on the number of properties and the level of calls for service proportionate to those property levels.
Correct. And the billing model was implemented in 2015 because there were several concerns from many municipalities that were presented through AMO about the inequitable costs for policing. You know, one municipality right next door to another municipality, depending on their policing agreement, one may have been in a contract and the other wasn't. And they had very, it was a possibility to have very diverse costs by these two neighboring municipalities. So the whole emphasis of implementing 2015 billing model was to have a more equitable distribution of recovery costs for policing, in addition to something that was very transparent and defendable in terms of being able to share that information amongst all of the municipalities in the province.
Right, and our costs did go down, as the chair just reminded me, fairly significantly in 2015. I think we dropped a good 10 or 12%. Now we're seeing that starting to creep back up, as it should, as our property levels increase. And for better or worse, our property levels are increasing fairly significantly in Brighton. So we would expect those numbers to creep back up based on the billing model.
So,
I'd like to add that this is a cost recovery method. So we determine the amount that's required to recover for the policing that we do in municipal areas. And with that amount, then we determine how much is going to be recovered through the base cost for services versus how much is going to be recovered through the workload portion. So we're sort of starting off with a high number at the beginning. It's a top-down effect for our cost recovery. And the way that we distribute it more equitably is by the number of properties.
go ahead.
So this notion that we have, and I think we've heard it quite a bit among council, is that we don't have enough officers to handle the needs that we have. But what you're saying is everything's going to be taken care of that comes our way, and it's a cost recovery. So it's not like, oh, sorry, yeah, that's all you have. That you've met your limit. We're not going to go deal with this, because that's really the notion we're getting at a council meeting. And that's why I really wanted to have this discussion, so that we're very clear on how it works. And I would love to get some sort of write-up, just kind of the basics as to how it works, what the cost recovery is, what happens when there's calls, and if there's lots of calls, or how, and even the fact that, no, they're not going to at one point say, sorry, that's all we have, too bad, wait till you increase your contract, that idea, and maybe not in those words, that's just me, paraphrasing it, but I find this very helpful.
Yeah, I do think from a council perspective, there is still, from some members of council, a want to enhance our services for increased traffic control and those types of things. And there may be a time, it won't be this year, but there may be a time when we do seek that enhancement. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that would mean renegotiating our contract or reopening or opening our contract back up. And just from a technical point of view, from a contract point of view, I wonder if you could speak to that and what it would mean when we're ready to hit the go button on enhancement, if we ever are.
Absolutely. The request for enhancement does not have to be tied in to the expiry of your contract. It could be considered at any time, and we could amend the contract. Having said that, depending on the timing of when this may or may not occur, we're currently waiting for the implementation of the new
Go ahead.
Further to that, we do get a lot of complaints of speeding, of running stoplights, and that's, I think, where this comes from, that we don't have enough officers to deal with it, it's not taken care of, and that we need to perhaps hire, a dedicated traffic officer. I guess my question is, is our community overrun with speeders? Or are we quite typical? And is there really a need for this? I guess at this point in time, and it may change, and there may be a time where we do need it. But this is kind of the complaints we get on a regular basis, and it's good to really just to understand if this is a direction that we really need to be going right now.
I'll speak to that a little bit, Linda. So, as far as your population and the setup of your community urban area, it's very difficult. Lots of traffic lanes, everything. It's a real spike in traffic lanes, certainly wide over the last 3 years. And that's, of course, push was on and get the black hat. We saw more and more officers on
Yes.
So primarily, the cost is made up very similar to, it covers the salary and benefits, the support costs and OPME, and it's approximately running at $175,000 a year for one full FTE. However, there would be some initial startup costs in the first year of that. In approximately $23,000 to $24,000 range. And the purpose for those initial costs, I can tell you, is they basically are for the uniform and equipment for that new FTE, portable radio, and then there's also a prorated control week of those initial costs that are included in that. So that $23,000 is sort of the initial first year added cost, but the ongoing annual cost of a constable right now is at $175,000.
Okay. Question for you. I'm a bit confused. And I say that because your early explanation that, we're not paying for hours per officer, that's gone. And it's based on what does a community need to deal with the issues. So would that not be up to the local detachment to determine what they need to fully service, whether it's Brighton, whether it's Trent Hills, whether it's whoever? Why would we need additional, I guess, if we're using the scope of, we know what we're doing, we know what you need, and that might differ from community to community. I get that. So why are we even talking about additional officers if that's the way we deal with things? Deputy Mayor?
The reason is because it's come up at council a number of times that we need to hire an additional officer. And that's why we're trying to get the information so that we fully understand what the process is.
Yeah, I get that.
Not saying that we're going to do
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
but I'm saying
cool.
we're just trying to understand it fully so that also it can be explained at council.
Your Worship?
I also think that from
Okay.
The other thing is the reason sometimes municipalities might be interested in a dedicated enhancement is, again, due to the integrated service delivery nature. You have your Northumberland detachment that's responsible for several different municipalities, and the resources, although Inspector Martin has officers assigned to each of his zones, within the detachment area, it could be fluid depending on where the need is. Normally, municipalities would want to engage an enhancement or hire an enhancement because the enhancement is dedicated to your municipality. It would be a number of set hours dedicated to your municipality only and not as an integrated resource throughout the whole catchment area.
Yeah, and I get that. I guess my only fear is, and this is for council, I would say, is that unless we have a police cruiser and a police officer parked in front of everybody's house, it's never going to be enough. So I would rely on expertise from our detachment to say, based on our experience, based on what's happening in the community, this is what what you need. Maybe I'm wrong, but my fear is the minute we start going down that slope, why don't I have a police officer in front of my house? I know that. I'm not asking. I don't need one. I can control things, but so, and it's happened. Your Worship, it has happened. Just so you know. But so that's my only fear is that, same with ambulance, same with a fire truck. I mean, if so I would rather react on actual facts, on needs, and I would go to the experts. And I know your conundrum with council that, it's not, but it's never enough. Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I think we're talking about an operational issue. and that's on Jeff's shoulders, and Inspector Martin will, deploy his staff as needed throughout the detachment on an ongoing basis, versus a political decision, which would be, we get X number of complaints. We need to say to the citizens, we're responsibly reacting to those complaints. Therefore, OPP, we're asking you for enhanced services so that we can deal with those concerns in our community. Because thankfully, in Brighton, the concern is speeding and stop signs, right? Thankfully. And so, great. So let's deal with that if we can. It's not going to happen this year. I don't believe anyway, just going through the operational budget discussions just this last week. We were already borrowing or taking from reserves to pay for our policing contract. We managed to call that back a little bit. So it won't happen this year. We're trying to be very gentle with taxes this year. We understand that the pandemic has had some pretty significant effects on a lot of our citizens, and we want to be gentle. Some people want to be more gentle than others. We still have a municipality operate too, so we have to understand that. But we just need to have, to the Deputy Mayor's point, an understanding of, if we go down this road, what does it mean from an operational standpoint in terms of boots on the ground? And what does it mean from a dollars and cents standpoint? And is it the right decision to make? So, Linda, thank you very, very much. And thank you, Inspector, for asking Linda to join us. It's very helpful to have the actual facts and, not have that filtered through the lens of, I need a police officer on every road. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just, I need, for your council members, an explanation of the billing model or how it works or something like that. Through your detachment manager, I'd be more than happy to provide that type of presentation at a future meeting. Should you request that?
Thank you. We'll take that under advisement. I think you've been down before, Linda, and not too long ago, as I recall. So,
Actually, it was my coworker.
okay.
Sergeant Ross.
Okay. I'll believe you. We see a lot of people at council.
Thank you very much. But just one last question. Back to 2015, when some municipalities were paying nothing, others were paying the whole freight. There was a time of adjustment. Is that time of adjustment done?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you.
It was a 5-year phase-in period, and that ended in 2020.
Great. Thank you so much. If there's any other questions before, thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Very helpful.
My pleasure. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Thank you, Linda. We'll talk soon.
All right. So you folks found that informative?
Very.
Good. That's good. Jeff, did you have something to add to that?
I can discuss more operational numbers. Deputy Mayor may have some further questions specific to detachment. What we're getting into there, though, is operations and numbers of officers. So I'm not sure I can go into that.
Is it something that you wanted to pursue?
Well, I originally had some further questions, just trying to understand it, but now that I understand that how it works, I don't think my questions are really relevant anymore. Really, if there's an issue, you're going to send officers. It's not a matter of, sorry, here's your 2 officers you get for today, and that's it. But I believe that that's sometimes the understanding that we have, and that no one is coming to help us today because we're at our quota. And I don't believe that's the case. And I already kind of asked about the traffic and the, like I said, it feels like the amount of complaints we get that we have this terrible community that everyone speeds and no one stops for stop signs. I don't believe that's the case. I'm saying that's how it feels sometimes. And I want to be able to address that, not reactionary, like, oh, wow, we better get someone out there. I want us to have a better way of dealing with it that people were able to explain to people how it works. And I know we won't please everyone. I get that. That's not going to happen. So And also the 401. We also hear that all our offices are at the 401. That's why we don't get them. And I guess for me, and I know we've had these discussions before, I guess I just need it very clear in my mind so that I'm able to speak to it in a way that actually is very accurate. So maybe you can touch base on the 401 thing again, and that does help to have that info.
Yeah, absolutely. I can.
Yeah, Your Worship, did you want to add something to that? No. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I can. I actually pulled a little bit of data early this morning specific to the 401.
So do we need to go in closed session for that? Or
I
you
don't
okay?
believe so for this portion,
Okay.
sir. Yeah. So 401, obviously you're a 401 community like our 5 municipalities throughout the county. If that notion is out there that the 401 is pulling officers away, that's not how it works day to day. I will say on those huge ice storm days when, and you know, because unfortunately the EDR is activated sometimes and it comes right through your town, most likely because it is an emergency and the 401 shut down, your Brighton officers will be on the 401 or being part of that.
As will our fire department and our paramedics.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if they're not on the 401 active in that investigation or the shutdown or safety of on-ramps, they're patrolling the EDR, because we know that when that EDR is activated, we have to keep an eye on that as well. People get impatient, they start doing silly things that they shouldn't be, and then we and you start getting complaints from those residents that live along that route. That is the only time that during an emergency like that an officer might not be in Brighton proper for that period of time, but very identical to other municipalities that have the 401. For calls,
But there are still police available for calls for service during that time.
absolutely,
Right.
it's all prioritized.
Right.
Ice storms in the 401, it might be like any larger scale major event. We front load. We have to get there, have to see what we're dealing with, and then we have very honed policy over the years of how we deal with that 401 during those. It seems like we get them more and more with weather, more freezing rain, less snow. So we are very efficient. We are good at what we do on the 401, and really we use far less officers nowadays than we did maybe even 8-10 years ago. I've been here for 13 years, and we manage it differently now. Big part of that is partnering with the MTO, whoever the MTO contract is, municipal roads, whatever municipality is impacted, we're on the phone immediately with them to let them know, one, EDR is activated, you're going to be seeing some traffic. We try to, I know it's a little bit difficult with the traffic lights in town here because there's a bit of a process involved there to get it on amber. But we do, with other municipalities, if they're traffic lights, let's get them on amber, keep that traffic flowing, because we all know what happens in town here when that happens. So, again, it's much like even a non-ice storm. If there's a fatal investigation or a good chance it'll turn into a fatal and the 401's closed down, you're impacted. That could be in July and August, but again, technology's helped us that way. We don't need to shut it down when our reconstructionists come in. We use drones now a lot of the time for measurements using lasers, so not the officer on foot with the total station anymore. So that's probably halved our time on average of closing down the 401 as well. A couple stats here. So for 401 calls for service in 2019, but specific to Brighton, there was 801 calls, and that's everything. That would include ice storms. Those are traffic complaints. The majority of that would be your traffic complaints because, you know, we know the 401, it's getting busier, 3 lanes are extending. Most part of those are going to be your traffic complaints, erratic driver. In 2000, so that was 801 for 2019. For 2020, year to date, only 440 for the Brighton. I would suggest a big part of that for the first 2 or 3 months of COVID because nothing was moving. So. Speeding complaints, this is for Brighton in particular. I'm sorry. No, sorry, I correct myself. This is still specific to 401. So of those totals that I just provided you, 72 were speed complaints. 2020, 103 of those 440 were specific to speeding complaints on the 401. So I believe I've answered that question of how, as far as how it works, and certainly the municipality is never left empty. You are very fortunate to have an OPP detachment within your community. Not many can say that. And so just having that, the Monday to Friday staff we have here alone, you have 4 or 5 full-time officers working out of that, not platoon officers, not shift workers, but they're there in different capacities. And then on the weekend too, there's usually a couple more officers in uniform in the building over and above of what platoon strength is.
Your Worship, you had a question? Good. Okay, well, thanks very much. I think that was a very good meeting today. Yeah.
And it's with regard to photo radar, and just to advise the board that photo radar will probably be run through the county, but the county is taking a wait and see approach to see to see how it works in the larger communities, so Durham, Peel, Toronto, before making a suggestion to County Council to bring it to Northumberland County. Should that happen, it would be the county's intention, my understanding is, to partner with the local municipalities to find out where the hotspots are. And of course, they'd want to do them mostly on county roads, but there are, of course, some community safety zones that aren't on county roads that we'd probably want to partner with them on too. So we're in a wait and see approach with regard to photo radar, just FYI.
Not on Lawson Road, okay, so.
I think you're pretty safe, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I don't know sometimes. All right. Any further comments? I guess our next meeting. I don't know if we ever established dates past this one last year or this year. I don't think so, right? So what does the board feel comfortable with, I guess?
I think we had been some time ago meeting monthly, and then we decided quarterly was going to work fine, so I would suggest February be our next meeting.
February, sure, okay. And then by then, hopefully we might hear something about countywide or detachment, maybe not.
I wouldn't count on it.
Okay.
I would think that would probably be maybe even a 2022
Okay.
look. They're taking a very cautious approach because of the costs involved.
Okay. All right, so the next meeting will be February, whatever, the last 26th? Great. 2021. Okay, any last call for any further business?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I promised you an update on the Brighton Plaza, and I just realized I didn't provide that. So
Yes, go ahead.
thank you. So a lot of work, a lot of partnership up front on that. Kelly Mason, again, was the lead, OPP lead on that. Bit of a long story, but I'll be brief. But really, it appears that, I won't say the problem will ever not be there, but it's certainly mitigated. One thing we are working on right now is using our auxiliaries members on foot patrol, not only there at the plaza in Brighton, but downtown as well. We know there is that need and desire from council as well for that increased visibility. So we're working with our provincial auxiliary program right now just to make sure that that's in line and meeting the criteria of the auxiliary members. Our auxiliary unit, we have a complement of 20. So 20 spots. We're down a little bit right now. We're down or considerably to what we usually are. We usually hover around 15, 16. We're at 9 right now. So we're about to launch a winter-long recruiting for auxiliary. Pandemic's been a bit of an impact on that for our members as well. So that was initially, we were going to use auxiliaries just to kind of hang out in that plaza area. We have engaged quite a few officers, especially for those first 2 or 3 weeks when it was a little bit heated. And so we had a lot of attendance. I was there myself on a number of occasions. Overall, we identified pretty quickly a few of the individuals that were causing 90% of the issue, and spoke with guardians and parents and other people like that. Met with the superintendent of the board. They were very engaging and an important partner of that. We brought in Alan from the bylaw perspective just to see. The suggestion was there because there's a couple no loitering signs up there right there, but it's not really an approach that we could take, or Alan, I don't think, on the bylaw side of it. Spoke to all the business owners. Property owner was eventually engaged, was a little bit reluctant there until we had some more communication with him, and he realizes that he's a big part to play as well. So up to now, Kelly's still on it. It's not going to be forgotten. This will be an ongoing. They're 100 meters from the high school, and with attractive businesses there as well. So it's off the radar for now, but we've not forgotten about it. And Kelly keeps that as one of her side projects.
Well, I know last week when I left here, I noticed you were engaged in the parking lot. So all of a sudden, it kind of, it's maybe I'm using the wrong words, but it wasn't a pretty sight. Just having, I kind of think, congregate. Not from your perspective. I mean, you were there doing what you're supposed to do, but I can understand the frustration with the local business folks.
And I must say, the school, the principal and vice principal, they did a great job as well. We met with them early. I think actually the day of or the day after we received the email from Mayor Ostrander, and they stepped up considerably. Messaging out, communication to homerooms, to teachers, letting them know, the kids know code of conduct, expectations of them, education to the kids that just because you're on school property, principal's still in charge under the Education Act and Safe Schools Act as well. So I think that was a big piece of it, is getting that communication out. Visibility of police, of course, that I find that always helps up front, but it's not sustainable. We know that as well. So that's why we try to cover every of that 2 lunch hours there. So we try to cover that 2-hour span as much as we could up front, knowing that especially with youth, that travels quick. And also at the same time, we curbed there was some ongoing incidents over at King Edward as well, with pre-planned scuffles or fights with kids. And again, vice principal and principal met with them specific to that issue, just to ask them for a little bit more engagement when they hear of that. What are they doing on their side, rather than just letting us know. So I'm happy with that level of engagement for those scuffles as well.
Okay. All right. Anything else for the good of the Services Board? Then I'll entertain them. Well, first of all, have a good holiday. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year and Happy Hanukkah, whatever that's going to be. I know we're going from 20 to 2, Christmas Day at my house, and we're still trying to wrap our head around, what the hell have we done, basically. So it's a bit of a challenge, but nevertheless, we make the best of it. All right, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Laura, and seconded by the mayor, and we're all in favor. Well, thank you. Thanks, Jeff. I gotta see.